Welcome back to Truth Be Told. We are here again, another week later, and we are excited to just continue this conversation about priorities. I think it's a big thing for all of us, but it's been a major thing in my life to declutter and do some housekeeping in my life.
Yeah.
To prioritize and like what we were talking about, there's a lot of good things that we can be doing, but it might all of the good things might be keeping us from doing the best things.
Yeah, so as Mr. Breeden would have kind of tried to reinforce with us as students 40 some years ago, beware of the barrenness of a busy life. And we can, how often we meet with people and you go to them, well, how are things going? Well, I'm busy. And if we really stop and ask, okay, you're busy, and let's be fair. If someone asked us the same thing, there are times that we're just busy. And you talked about that last year and how that the whole year went by so quickly. Mm-hmm. And you talked about that when we had breakfast and we had this discussion, and how it went by so quickly in the midst of the busyness. And you go look at it and you said, I'm not so sure that I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish in the midst of that busyness. So how do we sit down in the midst of that busyness? And everybody, that's not fair, because not everybody does everything all the time. So, but so many people will have priorities for us. They'll have an agenda for us.
Agreed.
They'll have a way to keep us busy. And so how do we do these things that we set down? And we then at the end of 2026, we look back over that and say, yeah, you know what, I didn't accomplish as much, but I accomplished more. Almost seems like a oxymoron there. Yeah. But more of the things that were the best, and rather the things that were the good. And so
because you can be, I grew up in a world where you worship busy.
Yes, and I grew up in the same world, and it was, and again, that is for a lot of guys that are entrepreneurs and that are business people and so on, that busyness and production-wise, if you're not producing something, then you're not accomplishing anything. There was a course that I took a number of years ago, and in that course, the guy said, and it's, if you walk into my office, you'll see a sign right on the end of the one of the bookshelves that says that remember to sharpen the axe for the job that lies ahead of you. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever worked with a dull axe and doing certain things, or a dull knife and so on, and you're working at it and you're working at it and you're working at it, and you go, someone says you should sharpen that thing, and you go, I don't have time. Mm-hmm. And all of this time so sharpening. Mm-hmm. So some of the things, the little things that we do that help sharpen that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, to me, that's like creating a system in our life, and sharpening the things so that we can accomplish the little things more effectively, but also filter through which ones are priority. Okay. And which ones are not.
So let me say this in response to you, and have you respond to it, Max, is that so setting down and writing, where do I want to be at the end of 2026? Where do I want to be in my walk with Jesus? We often talk about spiritual life, and people look at that and say, I don't know what spiritual life is. But if I say, in my walk with Jesus, where do I want to be? In my personal finances, where do I want to be? Then, as I'm going down that, in my relationship with my wife and my family, where do I, and naming it, and then
it backwards,
and then, so if I want to do that in those areas. So let's just take the simple one. Max, if I write down where do I want to be in my relationship with my wife at the end of 2026, what are some of the bites or the small steps that that we might be able to take? And we know this because we all want to get there, but how do we get there?
Yeah, I think that good question. Because I know what I want, but
would you sit down and one of the first things you write in that would you write down what her needs are?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just thinking about. Is I overthink things, so that is something that I wanted. This feeds into everything. It's overthinking less and just doing.
Yeah.
But figuring out, really praying about it first, understanding where Jesus can reveal what she needs, so that I can be.
Let me help you here.
Yeah.
Okay. So now Jesus is revealing. He's revealing who she is, and I remember saying to Jesus one day, God, would you help me to love my wife like you know she needs to be loved? Exactly. So now I'm beginning to see how God has made her. You know, that quality time is her thing, or giving of gifts. So what would you put down the next thing? Would it be a plan? And how would you do that simply?
Well, once I know that, then I would say I'd have to go backwards from there, because there's things that can be done, but it's hard to know where to start. But if you know the destination, then what's one step back from there? So if I think everybody needs to feel seen, and that's a big part of it. And that was a theme of the beginning of last year, is God gave to me is see people.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's see my wife, see her for who she is, see her for who God sees her. Starting there, but then what does it mean to see people? Like how do you look and see? How do I see what you need? How do I see what my wife needs? How do I see?
So you're going to have to become a student of her then.
Exactly, learning. So coming back to the learning aspect, if we are not learning, so coming to that, what am I learning? So for example, if she needs to be, she needs a time. So what do I have to change in my life to give her that time?
Yeah.
And so the little things like just reflecting.
Then she sees that she's that priority, right?
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. Because if I can't do the thing, the result won't happen.
As long as you're just saying words.
Yeah, words are the beginning, but it's also setting the tone for if you're going to do it.
Yeah, and words are the beginning, or they can be cheap, right?
Words are cheap.
You know, and yeah, we can look at that, and you know, we've watched our federal politics and provincial politics, and they're talking about all these things that they're going to do, but nothing's happened. So
exactly, and that's why I think it's important to be. This is kind of somewhat related, but like in the learning aspect. So learning, we can learn and we can say, but to do, you don't have to say to do.
Exactly.
And results come from the action.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about this, and we were chatting with the guys. Is love, for example, love takes sacrifice. You can't. If I want to put time into spending with my wife, I have to sacrifice something else in my life. But that's also showing the love for her. Not telling her I'm loving her, but I'm just showing her.
Yeah.
And it's the same for friends or anything like that, and anyone in our life. But if I'm the smartest person in the room, I have everything to say, to tell everybody, but I'm not listening or learning and absorbing anything. One thing that somebody gave me a long time ago, and I can't remember who. It was in
that's the key to originality, they say, is forgetting who.
Yeah, exactly. is never be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
And when I read Proverbs, there's a common theme of that specifically,
Yeah,
and it's continually, like you've said, you can learn something from everybody, but only if we're willing to.
Yeah.
But the only way you can do that is to listen.
Yeah. So again, we go back to this relationship thing that, if at the end of 2026, you or I are going to show our wife, I didn't say to our wife, I show our wife, and they can look at it in a tangible way that they become a priority. So, we're starting to watch them, we're starting to study them, what do they like, what do they not like, we're starting to spend quality time with them. If they're a person that that is that, or words of affirmation, we're doing things. The 7 love languages. If you read that, you can begin to understand how your wife is. But then you set these priority. They see that you have made them a priority, and you've taken the initiative to say, okay, let's look at our calendar. And what can we do together, right?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
So now I want to branch off from this, because I want to look at financially, right? Because if we keep doing the same things that we're doing, we're going to end up the same way that we are, right? And most of us, my dad used to say to me that it doesn't matter. The big concern is not how much. His simply would have said, is not how much money you make, it's how much money you spend. And that throughout most of my life has been a very simple mantra that, so if I'm making so much money, we all go, if I had a better job, if I had this, if I had that. So looking at it financially, this year, because a lot of people that I know will say, yeah, I'm I don't earn enough money. So what do we change? Because the scripture has so much to say about finances. I think someone said that Jesus, when he was here in the gospel, spoke more about money than he did about heaven and hell combined.
Right.
And so if Jesus spoke about that so often, and I was thinking of Proverbs 4:23, it says, watch over your heart with all diligence, and for from it flow the springs of life. And watching over our heart, and that has to do with our finances as well, not only our relationships, and we're not going to get time to talk about in this session. We're not going to get time to talk about that relationship with God. How can we fine-tune that some? I think that'll come maybe in another one that we do. And how do we fine-tune that, and how do we not become angry and bitter and so on, resentful for God if it doesn't turn out? We talked a bit about relationships, and we talked about a relationship with our wives, but that simple thing can apply to every relationship that we have.
Yes, well, I was going to say, that is one thing that you encouraged me to do several years ago, is to think about that and start trying to apply that. And I'm like, if I can do that for one person, being my wife, that's all I care about. But God doesn't work that way. It's because it's changed me as a person. He's changing. And so then that changes how that reflects and interacts to everybody else. So,
okay,
everybody else experiences that too.
And you know what, Max, we're going to wrap up with this. We're not even going to get to the finance one anymore. The finance one next week. We'll do that. But this one, Max, you said something that I think is a lot more profound than what you think it was. When we start seeing people, we start with one person. We start seeing our wife for who she really is, or we see, our friend for who they really are, right? Not what we might like to see.
Their heart.
And then we begin to see everyone else differently, right? And that begins to set parameters in our lives so that we see that person and we're not automatically thinking a negative thing. We're starting to
exactly.
So last comment.
Last comment. No, I believe, ending on this.
Because
Because that is one of those small bite-sized things is just learning and then experience and doing that thing, but that is where it starts to make the change everywhere, because
Yeah.
it's changing from the inside, and you start to see, if you start to see one person that way, you start to see everybody like that.
Yeah.
But that's a one little thing that is now making a big impact without you really trying or realizing it.
I think when you care for one person and you start to do that deeply, then you start looking at other people, and
Yeah.
and I think that's the truth that to be told, and I think
Definitely.
that. So thank you for joining us on these sessions on priorities, and we will probably do one more at least, and on priorities, and that'll cover our month of January as we start a new year, and then as you set goals. And not the big goals, but the small goals, and then see how they, at the end of 2026, what that really looks like. Keep a journal of that. Thank you for joining me.